A poor boy, with a big dream of becoming a doctor. A mysterious letter changes everything. A scholarship to a remote medical school, in a place no one dares to go near. But he didn't know that college burned down 30 years ago, and the people who inhabit it now are not human. Max's journey begins with a dream, but ends with a nightmare from which there is no escape. Ghost College is not just a story, it's a real curse. My name is Max. I was born in a simple, working-class neighborhood, inside a narrow, noisy alleyway filled with the sounds of children, the cries of women, and the moans of men returning from work with tired faces. My mother is a seamstress who works all day to provide for us, and my father works as an assistant in a small shop in the market. We barely make ends meet, but despite that, we laughed a lot and always said, what matters is health and safety. Since childhood, I've had one unshakable dream: to become a doctor. To help people, treat them, and travel to build my name somewhere worthy of recognition. But every time I got closer to my dream, life would knock me down. When I received my baccalaureate degree, I felt the world begin to change, as if my dream was just around the corner. I rushed to prepare my registration papers, ready to enroll in medical school, but the first shock awaited me: the high costs. Books, drawings, housing, food, everything requires money we don't have. My father opened his old suitcase, turned it over with eyes filled with sorrow, and said in a broken voice, "Max, I swear my heart is burning, but I have nothing." I was silent. I couldn't answer. I went into my room and closed the door. I cried. But not out of despair, but because I felt wronged. My dream was being slaughtered just because I was poor. 3 days passed, as I silently searched for any solution, any door that might open. Until that day came. I was sitting sipping a cup of tea one morning when there was a knock on the door. I opened it. It was the postman. He handed me a strange envelope without a word, then left. An envelope with no sender's name or organization logo, only a strange font reading: full scholarship to study at the Faculty of Medicine, free of charge. Location: Faculty of Medicine, South. Accommodation: free. Start of studies: in a week. Please confirm attendance via the attached email. I read the letter like someone dreaming. My heart began to pound. The college I'd always dreamed of. Now, free, and with housing. I ran to my parents, waving the letter like a child who'd found treasure. My mother raised her hands to the sky, thanking God, while my father remained silent. Then he said, "Max, this doesn't make sense. Who would cover all these expenses? And you don't even know who sent the letter?" I replied excitedly, "Dad, there are associations that support students. We live in the age of the internet." He sighed and said, "I won't stop you, but my heart isn't at ease." And that sentence never left my ears. Day after day, I began preparing myself. I gathered some of my things, printed the letter, and confirmed my attendance by mail. The day of departure arrived. When I arrived at the town where the college was located, the weather was cloudy, the rain was light, and the air was cool. I stood in front of the college gate. And the surprise came. A huge building, its glass gleaming, surrounded by trees and palm trees, green spaces, everything looking modern, as if it had been built yesterday. But the strange thing, there were no students there. The door was open, but the place was silent. I entered, trying to reassure myself, maybe the students haven't arrived yet, or the place is too big. I found a small room with a sign that read, "Hello, Max. Your room is on the 3rd floor, right? Room number 6. I read it, stunned. They know my name? I said nothing, and went upstairs. The room was simple, clean, with a bed and a small desk. I sat down, and I began to hear a faint sound. It sounded like a moan from the upper floor. I went up, and found no one. Here, I began to feel that something was not right. I had trouble sleeping that night. And I had a dream. I dreamt of a burning building. Screams. Blood. Students dragging their feet. And a voice whispering, "Welcome, Max. You're back with us." And here, the story began. The second day began strangely from the first moments. The sun didn't rise as usual. A fog hung over the entire college building, as if a heavy cloud had been stationary above it, unmoving. I left my room looking for any department, any official, but the corridors were completely empty. That heavy silence pressed on my chest and made my heart beat unnaturally fast. I was descending the stairs when I heard a soft voice behind me. "Are you Max?" I turned around quickly. I saw a girl standing behind me. Her hair was long, black as night, and her eyes were wide and sparkling in a strange way. She was wearing simple but clean clothes. She smiled at me, and, despite that smile, I felt a shiver run through my body. Something about her didn't feel right. I said, "Ah, yes, I'm Max. And you?" She replied, "I'm Elena, a student like you here. I haven't seen a new face in a long time." I said, surprised, "But the college is empty?" She smiled and said, "Not always. You'll get used to it, students come." Then she placed her hand on my shoulder. All day, I couldn't stop thinking about that touch. It was as cold as ice. We walked together to the study hall, and sure enough, we found some students sitting there. But as I got closer, my body began to tremble. They were sitting still, but their faces distorted. It was as if someone had pulled their skin down. Their eyes were wide, fixed, unblinking. They weren't speaking, just staring in one direction, as if they were acting out a scene while they were dead inside. I said to myself, "Am I imagining it? Or is this really happening?" Elena saw me tense up and said, "Don't worry, they're always like this. They don't talk much, you'll get used to it." I didn't answer. I sat down, but my breathing was ragged. Every minute I wanted to run away, but something held me back. Suddenly, a tall man entered. I took him for a professor. His face was obscure, barely visible, immersed in shadows. He entered without saying a word. He wrote strange symbols on the blackboard, then left. All the students stood up at the same time and left behind him like a regimented army. I remained seated, unable to move. I didn't understand anything. Elena came over to me and said, "Come, I'll show you the backyard of the college. It's very beautiful." I went with her. It was indeed a large yard, with huge trees, leaves slowly falling from them, and the air smelled of ancient earth, as if the place didn't belong to this time. But I noticed something. Whenever I tried to talk to her, she answered in general terms. She didn't mention anything about herself, or the other students, or the history of the college. I asked her, "Has this building ever burned down? Or something happened to it?" She paused. Her expression changed slightly. Then she smiled again, but it wasn't a normal smile. She said, Max, why all these questions? I don't like people who pretend to be detectives. She laughed a little, but her tone was cold, sharp. And at that moment, I realized this girl wasn't who she seemed. I went back to my room and closed the door tightly behind me. I sat listening to my phone recordings. I had recorded the lecture. When I got to the part where the professor's voice was supposed to be heard, there was no voice. There was a faint moan, and footsteps getting closer and closer to the microphone, and then a whispered voice saying, "You're in, and you're not leaving." I dropped the phone from my hand. This isn't college. And this girl isn't human. And no one will believe me. When Elena knocked on the door, I was lost in thought. My mind was filled with questions, and my heart hadn't yet settled over what had happened that morning. But the knock, it was quiet, soft, like a musical melody from another world. I opened the door. She was standing in front of me, holding a plastic bag of pizza and a bottle of juice in her other hand. She hadn't changed, the same smile, the same eerie, uneasy stillness. She said in her soft voice, "I thought I'd share dinner with you. You shouldn't be alone in this place, especially at first." I hesitated. But deep down, I needed to talk, to have company, even if it was fake. I felt a little shy. It was the first time a girl had entered my room, and I knew it was unnatural. Still, I let her in. She entered, turned on the dim lamp in the corner, and sat down directly on my bed, as if she knew the place well, knew every detail. She sat down, holding the bag, and said, "I brought you a vegetable pizza and warm juice. It tastes amazing." I thanked her, sat next to her, and we began to eat. I was so hungry, I hadn't thought about the taste or the appearance. But from the first bite, I felt something was wrong. The pizza was excessively soft, and the cheese had a metallic taste. It smelled like dried blood. But I ignored it. Hunger was stronger than my suspicions. Then I sipped the juice. The first sip caught in my throat. It was very hot, and it tasted strange. A mixture of bitter herbs, and a mysterious flavor I couldn't identify. I wiped my mouth and asked her, "What kind of juice is this? It doesn't look familiar." She looked at me, her eyes shining with a strange twinkle, and said, "A special juice. It gives you strength, but you have to endure it." I thought, "Endeavor it? Is this some kind of medicine?" As I was about to finish drinking, I felt a pain in my stomach, as if something was twisting inside me. I quickly put the bottle down, and I began to feel a burning sensation inside my chest. I quickly got up to the small bathroom in the room and began to vomit. Something red, thick, and heavy came out of my mouth. It was blood. I felt dizzy, my eyes were red, and my heart was racing terribly. I tried to rinse my mouth, but the taste remained, as if it had hidden in my throat. I returned to the room, and found Elena still sitting. But her face had changed. She wasn't smiling anymore. She was staring at me, her eyes completely black. Her hands began to transform in front of me. Her fingers grew longer, and her nails extended like sharp blades. I said, trying to escape, "What did you do to me? What was in the juice?" She answered me in a low voice, a whisper that drifted into my ear like a cold wind. "Max, you need to open your eyes. If you're sent back outside, there's no door to bring you back alive." And suddenly, she was gone. As if she'd evaporated right in front of me. There was only a foul odor in the room, and a heat boiling in the air. I sat in the corner of the bed, trying to breathe. My hands trembled, and my heart leaped into my throat. I turned on the big light. The room was empty. No Elena. No pizza. No juice. But, in the middle of the floor, there was a red blood stain. And small footsteps leaving the room. And never returning. And that's when I realized, this college is not from the human world. And Elena is not a girl. I woke up from that nightmare, still in the corner of the bed. I couldn't tell. Was I asleep or awake? Was what happened real, or just a hallucination? But the blood still on the floor, the stain of bitter juice, and the lingering smell in the room. All of these were clear signs telling me what happened wasn't a dream. I stood up, my heart pounding like a drum inside my chest. I decided to get out. To escape from this place. From this world that smiles at you in the face and digs its claws into your back. I opened the door slowly. I stepped into the corridor, preparing to see hell, darkness, strange faces lurking. But there was nothing. Everything seemed normal. The lights were on, students were walking around, talking, laughing. The air was fresh, and the smell of coffee wafted from the cafeteria. Even the birdsong outside was audible. Everything, so normal it made you question your sanity. I slowly descended the stairs, searching for any official, anyone I could talk to. I just wanted to understand what was going on. What was I doing here? But everyone I passed acted as if I was normal, as if nothing had happened. And suddenly, I saw Elena, standing in the middle of the corridor, wearing the same clothes, her hair flowing over her shoulders. But this time, she smiled at me. A warm, pure smile, like an angel's. My heart started beating fast, but I waited for her to speak. She said nothing. She walked past me and whispered quietly, "You woke up early today, didn't you?" Then she continued walking, without mentioning anything about yesterday. No pizza, no blood, no juice. As if nothing had happened. I stood watching her walk away, and blend in among the students as if she were one of them. But what terrified me most was that all the students looked normal. No distorted faces, no strange steps, no wandering glances. They all acted normally. Doubts began to creep in. Am I crazy? Was everything I saw just in my head? I continued walking down the corridor, trying to gather my thoughts. I saw myself in the mirror of one of the side windows. My face was pale, my eyes were red, and I looked as if I hadn't slept in days. And yet, within this calm atmosphere, I felt suffocated. It was as if I were in the middle of a huge play. Everything was elaborate, ornate. But the script exuded the scent of death. I continued walking until I reached the administration office. I wanted to speak, to ask, where is this college located? Is it accredited? Who sent me the message? But the administration was closed. A note was hung on the door, written in strange handwriting. Administration on vacation. Come back later. I thought to myself, what? A college bustling with life, students studying, and the administration on vacation? Doubts grew in my chest, and I decided to leave the college. I headed to the main gate. It was open. I felt happy, but as I approached, I saw the guard standing in front of it. But this time, he was frozen. He didn't move. He looked like a statue. His eyes were open, but unblinking. I asked one of the students, "What's with the guard?" He laughed and said, "Don't worry. He's always like this, a bit strange, but he's part of our staff. I took a step back. I thought to myself, oh my God, are these people normal? Or does no one notice anything? I returned to my room, trying not to look scared. I opened the door. But something was changing in my mind. Was everything that had happened just my imagination? Have the jinn started to manipulate me? Or am I about to lose my mind? At that moment, I knew one thing. This college is not ordinary. And Elena is not just a student. She is the key to a dark door. And I was close, very close, to discovering the first secret of this veiled hell. A new day began, with the sun shining brightly over the college, its light filtering through the window and warming my face. And for just a second, I forgot everything. I woke up thinking only about breakfast. A little rest, a little order, a little forgetting about what had happened yesterday. I went to the bathroom, washed my face, thinking to myself, maybe it's all due to tiredness. Maybe my mind is starting to collapse a little. I got dressed, grabbed my notebook, and went down to the cafeteria. The atmosphere was beautiful. The students were eating, laughing, and chatting. And Elena was sitting alone, her eyes staring silently out the window. I watched her from afar, and something inside me refused to get close to her. I didn't know why, but my instinct was screaming, keep your distance. I sat down at a table, and bread, cheese, and coffee were placed in front of me. For the first time since coming to this college, I felt a sense of nature. I felt like I was breathing life. But amidst all this, there was a faint whisper, like a breeze passing by my ear. I thought someone was talking nearby, but when I turned around, there was no one there. No problem. I continued eating breakfast, then headed toward the library. It was large, old, but beautiful with a classic feel. And the books were arranged very neatly. I started looking for medical references, wanting to review some of my lessons, to forget these strange things for a while. I read for an hour, then two, and the quiet of the library gave me a kind of peace, until sleep began to creep into my eyes. I closed my eyes for about half an hour, and when I opened them, I felt a shadow. It was as if someone was standing in front of me. I opened my eyes slowly, and there was no one there. I wanted to close the book, but I was surprised to find that the book had changed. It was no longer about medicine, bones, or cells. The page in front of me was written in a strange language, with letters I'd never seen before. In the middle of the page, there was an old photo of the college, but the college in the photo was burned. I quickly closed the book and flipped the cover. It was the same medical book. Fear surged through my chest. I grabbed my notebook and quickly left the library. I went to the department, wanting to find someone to talk to. But as soon as I entered the hall, I saw them all standing still. The students, the professor, all standing still. It was as if I had stepped into a frozen image. There was no sound. I walked slowly among them, approaching the professor. Not breathing, not moving, not speaking. I began to back away, my eyes searching for a way out. And suddenly, I heard footsteps. Footsteps coming from the ceiling. I raised my head. The ceiling was moving, as if something was climbing it, in a slow, heavy, sick sound. Then the walls began to whisper. Max, you're back. Max. Everything began to blur. The light turned blood red, and the students began to move. But their movements were broken, distorted, like they were horror dolls moving at a terrifyingly slow pace. She entered through the other door. Her eyes were completely black. She said to me in a rough voice, "Not a girl's. You are now one of us." I ran. I ran without looking back, and everything around me began to distort. The walls were weeping, the students were split in half, and the sky outside the window turned pitch black. I reached my room, closed the door behind me, and heard nothing except silence. That silence, more suffocating than screaming. And then, I realized the truth. This college doesn't contain horror. This college is horror itself. I woke up today, and I didn't understand why the weather was so strange. The sun was shining, but its light wasn't warm. It was dim, as if it were emanating from underwater. It wasn't day, nor night, something in between, a dead light. I was still in shock from what happened last night. The juice, the blood, us, the stillness that had gripped everyone. I wanted to convince myself that I was hallucinating, but something in my heart said otherwise. I went to the bathroom, just wanting to wash my face, to really wake up. I stood in front of the mirror, and there I saw something unusual. In the mirror, there was a clear back door. A door in the wall behind me. A door that hadn't been there before. I turned around slowly. Nothing. No door. I looked back in the mirror. The door was still visible. I approached the wall behind me. Slowly, cautiously, touching it. And I'm not going to lie. I was terrified. But as soon as I touched the wall, my hand began to sink into it. As if it were clay, or something living absorbing me. I quickly withdrew my hand. But curiosity was stronger than fear. I pushed a little, and my whole body entered through the wall. Imagine yourself passing through a dark corridor, smelling like an open grave. Not dirt, but rotten, putrid flesh. I wasn't walking. I was being dragged. I reached a small door. An old, cracked wooden door. Like the doors of old dungeons. I opened it, and there was a room. Black, narrow. In the middle of it a table, on which stood a lit candle and a single picture. I approached the picture, and here was the decisive moment. The picture was a group picture. Students, professors, the principal. And in the middle of them, a face I knew all too well. Elena. Same features, same eyes, same smile. But the date of the photo? 1992. I stood in shock. My mind was pounding like a hammer. Is this Elena? Could it be her? What is she doing in a photo that's over 30 years old? Is she not human? Before I could continue thinking, I heard a whisper behind me. Are you looking for us, Max? Or are you looking for yourself? I turned around quickly. There was no one there. But the walls began to peel, as if dead skin was being peeled off. And hands began to emerge, piercing the air, searching for me. I stepped back, but the door closed. The candlelight began to dim, little by little. Seconds later, I was plunged into complete darkness, and all I could hear was the sound of my heartbeat. Fast. Heavy. Knock. 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 I began to scream. call out. But my voice kept returning to me with a strange echo. Not a normal echo, but an echo carrying whispers. As if I could hear my own voice, along with other voices echoing what I was saying. And suddenly, the light came back on. The room returned to normal. The image disappeared, and the candle was still lit. I ran out, returned to the corridor, and strangely, everything returned to normal. Students moved around. Teachers entered the classrooms. Even to us. She was carrying books, walked past me, smiling and saying, "Good morning, Max. Did you sleep well?" I answered her, choking back, "I'm trying." I went back to my room, took a deep breath, and tried to process it. What's going on? Am I imagining all this? Is there another world inside this college? Or is my mind starting to shatter from the pressure? I don't know. But there's one thing I'm sure of. Something is watching me. Since that day, I've been living in a constant state of tension. Everything seems normal, but I am no longer the same. I stay up late in my room, I can't sleep anymore. And every moment, I hear knocks, footsteps, whispers. And I try to convince myself, just an illusion. But last night, something happened I'll never forget. I was returning from the library. Night had fallen, and the corridor leading to my room was completely empty. This isn't strange in itself, but the atmosphere. It was strangely cold. Not the cold of the weather, but the cold of an open grave. When I arrived near my room, I noticed an open door to the left. An empty room, one I'd never seen anyone enter. Curiosity got the better of me. I approached. I pushed the door open quietly. I didn't hear a sound. The room was dark, but a faint light was seeping in from one corner, where an old, cracked mirror stood. And standing in front of it was me. But that wasn't me. The one in the mirror wasn't repeating my movements. I stood, and he continued to breathe. I turned my head, but he kept staring at me. I approached, slowly. And then something unforgettable happened. The version in the mirror smiled. But it wasn't a human smile. It was a dead smile, devoid of soul and mind. A cold, distorted smile. Then his lips began to move. But the voice didn't come from his mouth. It came from behind me. The voice was saying, "You're back, Max, but are you ready to see the truth?" I turned quickly. No one. But the door closed. The mirror began to melt like wax melting in a fire. Everything in the room began to change before my eyes. The walls turned red. The bed bent and shriveled as if something inside was writhing. The floor began to crack, pulsating as if it were alive. The smell of burning rose to my nostrils. The same smell I had smelled the first night. Then I saw something on the walls. Names. Writing in strange letters. Some in English, some in languages I didn't know. But one name was repeated over and over. Elena. It was written in blood. On every wall, every corner. As if it were being repeated forever. I heard a knock on the door. But the knocking wasn't from outside, but from within. Someone wanted to get out. Not in. Suddenly, the wall began to peel. As if the flesh was being peeled off a living body. And a girl's head emerged from it. It wasn't Elena, but her features were close. Except her face was distorted. And her eyes were completely empty. she said in a voice filled with anger. "Run, Max, before you become like us." I ran. I pushed the door with all my might. I don't know how, but it opened. I ran out into the corridor, sweating, my heart pounding like war drums inside. But the corridor had changed. It wasn't the same. No lights, no signs, no side doors. Just one door in front of me. A black, old door with engravings that burned the eye. I knew at that moment that I had to know what lay beyond that door. I approached, and as soon as I arrived, the door opened on its own. Inside, a stone staircase led down. No light, no sound. Only the smell of death. I wanted to go back, but the door closed behind me. Only then did I realize the truth. I had entered a new phase. That this college wasn't just haunted. It contained another world. A world from which no one could easily leave. Then I heard it. That distant voice, the old whisper. "We were all like you, Max. It's good that you came. But leaving is forbidden." I woke up rubbing my eyes. My heart was still pounding. But the atmosphere was calm. The sun was shining. The birds were chirping. And the sound of life had returned. I looked at the clock. 8:12 a.m. Everything seemed normal. I walked out of my room. I saw students passing through the hallways. Some laughing. Some talking on the phone. Others running because exam time was approaching. I said to myself, "What is this? Where is the horror? Where is the blood? Where is the black door?" I walked over to one of the students, a young man I had seen last night. I asked him, "Excuse me, brother. Did something strange happen at the college yesterday? A fire? Anything unusual?" He looked at me, then smiled slightly and said, "Nothing, everything is normal. Have you forgotten yourself?" I was silent. I went back to the library. I picked up a book, but my hands were trembling. I went to the bathrooms to wash my face. I stood in front of the mirror. But this time, everything was normal. Me, just me. I smiled sarcastically. "Max, you seem to be losing your mind, or dreaming too much." But inside, something didn't want to be convinced. I hadn't forgotten that mirror that moved of its own accord. Nor that door that led me down. Nor that girl who came out of the wall. I went to the cafeteria. I sat down. Then she came, to us. I said to myself, "Now I'll know, is it really us, or not?" She sat down in front of me. She brought a slice of pizza and a carton of juice. The same pizza. The same juice. She said with a smile. "This time, without blood. Will you eat with me?" My heart stopped for a moment. "What? Have you read my mind? Or are you making fun of me? Or am I really losing my mind?" I replied, trying to compose myself. "Thanks. I'm not hungry." She kept looking at me. Then, in her soft, calm voice, she said, "You shouldn't doubt yourself so much, Max. Everything is normal." How did I know I was doubting? Am I dreaming? Or are these people dreaming? I began to sink into a whirl of doubt, trying to distinguish between reality and illusion. But everything became blurry. I went back to my room, closed the door, stood in the middle of the room, then shouted, "Am I losing my mind?" But I didn't hear a response from outside. Only from within. A voice deep within me said, "You haven't lost it yet, but you're close, just one more step." I approached the mirror, turned on the light, and looked into my own eyes. But this time, I felt as if I wasn't the one looking. As if someone else was looking at me from inside the mirror. I took my notebook and began writing down everything I saw. Everything I felt. Every whisper, every moment. But the first page wasn't blank. It had a sentence. Written before I'd written anything. Elena isn't human. I closed the notebook, turned off the light, and sat in the corner of the room. Feeling like a little child. Lost in the middle of a dark forest. I no longer trusted myself. Nor people. Nor this world around me. And I knew one thing. What was coming was more dangerous. I don't know how long I slept. But when I woke up, there was a deep voice whispering in my ear. A voice that didn't sound like a human voice. "Max, time's up." I opened my eyes. The room was dark. The light was off. But the curtain was open. And moonlight filtered in, casting eerie shadows on the wall. I got out of bed. I had a strange feeling inside. As if something was pulling me from deep within. Pushing me in a direction I didn't understand. I approached the door. And as soon as I opened it, everything changed. The corridor was no longer the same. The light was a dim red. The walls were cracked. And the ceiling dripped with blood. I walked slowly. And with every step I took, I could hear a faint cry. Like a child's voice in the distance. But it was getting closer. I reached a large door, which I had never seen before on this floor. A massive wooden door, on which was written in bold letters, "If you enter, there is no return." My body trembled, but terror and curiosity overcame me. I extended my trembling hand, grasped the handle, then opened it. It was as if I had entered another world. A spacious room, in the middle of which was a circular table, and on chairs sat college students, whom I saw every day. But now, their faces were burned. Their eyes were black, staring at me without blinking, without breath. And in their midst was Elena. She was wearing a white dress, her hair flying despite the lack of wind, and her eyes swiveling like the hands of a clock. She stood up and said in her usual voice, "Hello, Max. I've arrived." My feet almost gave way. I stammered, "What is this? Who are you?" I smiled. But it wasn't a human smile. Her mouth cracked, and her voice changed. "We are the inhabitants of this land, before humans. Now you will become one of us." She stamped her feet, and the place shook. The wall cracked, and creatures crawled out. Half human, half scorpion. Their eyes dripped blood, and their voices dug into my ears. I backed away, but the door closed behind me, and an inner voice screamed, "Max, face them, or die." I tried to run away, but the ground turned into a sea of hands, grasping me, pulling me down. And Elena? Elena had transformed into a monster. Her face changed. She now had 4 eyes, long fangs. She laughed and screamed. "You drank our blood. You entered our world. There's no escape for you." She looked at me once, and I felt my mind burning. I began to see memories that weren't mine. Blood, fire, screaming faces, and a voice whispering, "Ghost College. Only the body leaves." I fell to the ground. I began to shake. Blood poured from my mouth, and the walls began to whisper loudly, "Choose, Max. Choose." I cried. I screamed. I banged my head on the floor. But there was no escape. She came over. She held out her hands. She said, "Come. I'll show you your new home." My hands froze. My extremities went cold. And my mind began to fall into a black hole. The light was fading. The voice was getting farther away. And the last thing I saw, I was my face in the mirror. But it wasn't me. Then, I lost consciousness. I slowly opened my eyes. The light was bright white. The smell of disinfectant filled the air. The sound of medical equipment buzzed in my ears, with my heartbeat playing on the screen. Am I in the hospital? I tried to move, but my body felt heavy. My head was pounding like a drum, and everything around me was blurry. Suddenly, the door swung open. My mother came in screaming, "Max, my boy, thank God you're awake." She threw herself on top of me, hugging me, with tears streaming down her cheeks. She repeated, "I was scared for you. I was about to lose my mind." Then my father came in. He stood by the bed, and I looked at him. His face was pale, but there was relief in his expression, and something else I couldn't explain. He said in a calm but sharp voice, "Max, why did you go to that college?" I fell silent. I couldn't find anything to say. He continued, "People said they saw you in front of an abandoned building. The medical college that burned down 30 years ago." My eyes widened in shock. "What?" My mother continued, holding my hand tightly. "Max, that building hasn't been inhabited since that day. Fires, deaths, and people still say it's haunted. And whoever goes there doesn't come back." I tried to speak. I wanted to shout out what I'd seen. About Elena. About the pizza. About the blood. About the students without faces. But my tongue was paralyzed. And all that came out. Tears welled up in my eyes. And before I could say a word, I felt a deep chill in the room. I slowly raised my eyes. And my father was still standing. But behind him, there was a person. Elena. She was wearing the same white dress. Her hair hanging over her face. Her eyes shining in the darkness. And she was smiling. That cold, mocking smile, without a sound. I gripped the bedspread tightly. And sweat began to drip from my forehead. I wanted to scream. To tell them, "Behind you. Behind you." But before I could open my mouth, she disappeared from us. The room was back to the way it was. There was only me. And my parents. And a heavy silence echoed deep within me. I looked up at the ceiling, repeating to myself, was it all real? Or just a dream? Or have I entered a world that I can never leave? And so, Max's journey ended inside a college that never existed. A college consumed by fire 30 years ago. But the spirits never left. Max came back to life. But something inside him had changed. Something that couldn't be explained. The end? Maybe. But some stories never end. They remain dormant, waiting to be awakened again.